Hey everyone, this is Andrew, and in this video I'm going to give you a first look at my new sample library called Neutronic. What I did for Neutronic is I got a modern mono analog synthesizer, and I sampled it across the keyboard, across all of its oscillators, for both of its oscillators. So I get all four waveforms for oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. And what this allows you to do is cool things like tuning, width, mixing, different oscillators blended together. And then, of course, you have all your normal parameters. So I'm just going to play a note here. So, as you can hear, you can get some pretty nice ambient sounds out of it. Let me go to another patch that's included. Let's go to simple square bass patch. And first thing I'll do is I will change the release on the VCF and the VCA. Let's actually make sure the mod depth's down, and I'll put this down as well. There we go. So that's kind of the sound I'm looking for. So that's just two square waves set right next to each other. I'll turn off the reverb and bring up the filter. So you can get that lovely analog detune sound. You change the width. This becomes more obvious if you set the oscillators to be different. So basically you're changing which ear is hearing which waveform. So if I bring this back to square, and actually what I'll do is I'll bring this one to triangle and this one to saw, and I'll change the mix. So you can blend them together in different ways as well as pan them. So that's kind of the oscillator control section. Now next we have the filtering. Of course you have a low pass, which is a fourth order low pass filter. You can control the resonance. You also have a fourth order high pass filter with resonance. I did add an LFO, so if I turn up this LFO mod depth controls the intensity of the LFO applied to the filter, specifically the low pass filter. You can change the number of units for each step. So if I want to do 4 eighth notes, and it has a variable wave shape, so I can set this to pulse or square. You can set it to noise or random, and speed this up a little bit. So already you get some pretty cool sounds. If I disable that, and then what I'll do is I will turn on the vibrato. Gives you kind of a chorusing effect. It's not really chorus, but just the richness of the sounds combined with the vibrato kind of gives you that effect, I guess. Crank up some reverb, put on some delay. Now we're back into the ambient territory. This kind of moves on forever. Let's turn that off. And let's take a look at the noise and saturation controls. Just to add a little bit of grittiness and noise to your sound. It's also saturation, which is essentially distortion but a little less aggressive. That's kind of the pure sound. pretty gentle, but it can really bulk up the sound if you're using like a square patch. A very nice saturation effect. So lastly, at the bottom, we have these dual sequencers. So these are actually things that I custom scripted for this when I was trying to learn about how to program step sequencers. And so this is kind of one of the experiments that came out of it. And I found it was a nice effect for the synth. I didn't want to go down the territory of having a normal sequencer and having to deal with, syncing beats to the DAW and everything, because I don't really like instruments like that. When something comes with a sequencer, I don't really enjoy it. But what I thought is nice is that when you have kind of a custom LFO, or something that when you trigger the sound, you have an ADSR that is much more customizable than just, ADSR. This is kind of like that. So what happens is that this controls the cutoff, and this controls the resonance of the low-pass filter. So you can set this to whatever you want. Let's do this, and you can set this to whatever you want. And then you can set your rate to, let's just say, 16th notes. Now, if I turn this one on first, what happens is that when you play a note, it's going to start triggering the sequencer. So if I bring this down, it'll be more obvious. Then you let go and it dies off. So the way it works is that while you're holding stuff down, it's going to keep going through the part, and it's always going to stay locked in to the note that you start off with. So it's never going to get off rhythm if you change chords in a weird way, as long as you hit the next note while the release is still active. So, and the way you tell that is if you look down here. Originally I kept this in as test, but I found it handy for the user to be able to see where they are in their sequence, and when it's actually starting and stopping, so you don't have to kind of listen. Like if you're programming a really minute or subtle patch, it's going to be hard to hear. So I left that in just for your reference. So it just counts through what steps you're on, and you don't have to exactly pay attention to what the numbers mean, but basically this is the steps for the first sequencer. If I get this one and I turn it on, then you can see the steps for each sequencer. This value here is just a counter that has to do with when it transitions to the steps, but basically if it's all zeros, it's stopped, and if it's counting notes, it's still going. So I can see long after I let the note, until the note actually, finishes releasing, the counter's still going. So it's a nice visual reference to see where you are. But you can get some pretty cool sounds with this, wacky sounds as well. And these are relative scales, so if you put this all the way up and this all the way up, this is kind of wacky, but you don't really hear much of anything. But if I put this all the way down, that's when you actually notice it. So anyways, let's now that you kind of know how the whole synth works, I'm just going to take you through some of the presets that I think are cool. Go to the ambient section. Let's do, how about Edge? Staying in line with the ambient sounds, let's do, how about I do wobbly sines? Let's take a look at bass. We already looked at simple square. Let's look at a growler one. go to effects next. Old Broken Reel. This one I really like because I found it kind of creative. This one I made personally. It uses the random noise LFO to kind of create these little blips and pops and stuff in the sound. And of course, there's plenty of noise, saturation, and vibrato, slow vibrato, to kind of give you that wow, flutter, noisy tape machine kind of vibe. So I like this one a lot. So when I say patch that I made myself, I made a good amount of these patches myself, but a lot of them is actually a collaboration. There's these two musicians / sound designers that I know who I sent the instrument to check out, and they contributed a good amount of patches and demos actually. So if you check this out on my website and also on Kontakt Hub, you'll see some of the demos are made by not me. And also some of the patches are the same case. I'm not going to mention all their info here, but if you check in the description below and also in the product description, I have links to their pages. So I definitely recommend you go and check out their music because a lot of the best sounds in this library actually came from them experimenting and pushing the limits on what the synth could do. So if I go back to this browser, I'll go to lead and I'll pick well, classically 5. And let's do FM sounding saws. Yes. Go through pluck. Let's do tiny damp delay. Go to step. Let's do ambient C. And then synth. Synth I consider kind of sounds that are a little more, I guess, traditionally synthy than some of these other categories. Let's do huge lead and pad. Very Juno 106-esque, although I do actually have a patch in here called Juno-esque as well. And then lastly, we have this drums experimental one. This was contributed by one of the musicians or sound designers, and he actually made one of the demo tracks entirely with Neutronic. So it's not just the synths, it's also the drums. And so some of these are a little wacky. I wanted to include them because I want people to get the idea that you can do this with synths. It's pretty common in the past that you could get a traditional, monophonic or polyphonic synthesizer, and if you play with it the right way, you might be able to get some drum sound. And it's the same with this. This is just a sample library of analog synth sounds. All the modulation is exactly the same. So basically certain keys will sound different. And as you can hear, that one's a little more subtle. But if I go to, I'll just go through another one. Here they have sweet spots, and that's because of the way the low-pass and high-pass filters are set to selectively produce a note in a certain key. So that gives you a raw sound that then you can kind of process and turn into an actual drum sound. And those other, more interesting ones. Some of them are subtle, but I thought it was cool just to include those in here. All right, that's about it for this first look at Neutronic. I hope you enjoyed it and that you're interested in it. This is the most work I've spent on a Kontakt instrument or library since I started making Kontakt instruments and libraries. It's available now on generastudios.com. Links in the description. It's also on Kontakt Hub and a couple other sites as well if you prefer to use those formats. Again, links in the description. It's currently going. Retail price is $30 US, but it's on sale for the next 2 weeks for $20 US. So if you're interested in this thing, pick it up during the sale. You might as well. But if not, don't worry. It's going to be available forever. And, as per usual in the software world and just, the American way, of course, there will be Black Friday sales as well. So, yeah, if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out. Be willing to provide you more info. And if you check the product page, that is all kind of the detailed info on, all the features and the number of files and gigabytes and number of presets and the info for the musicians/sound designers that help me out with the presets as well. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.